Hey everybody, something a little different today. Obviously this is not me playing, this is a replay from one of our Euro goons, Cippalippus. He's probably one of the better goon players in the game, and obviously he's on the EU server. Now this makes it interesting because the EU server tends to play a little differently to NA. He's in an Object 430, a very good tank, not that I'm biased at all. So let's see what he does. Immediately we can tell he's not going to go right through the road there like the enemy Batchat's doing, otherwise he would have started moving that way at the beginning. Instead he's just doing the old school field spot where you pop out into the middle of the field and loop back before you can get shot at. Now the advantages of this are you're not exposed to the enemy for nearly as long. But the problem is you don't get quite the same quality of spotting out of it, although it does leave you more flexible to move around the map. The push into the enemy base down in K3, K4 is something that is not really easy to back out of. Once you commit to it, you'd better stick with it or you're going to die. Now then, instead of heading to the hill, he heads to this spot. Now, this position is usually used by tank destroyers or light tanks. Outside of low tiers, you very rarely see it used by anything else, but holy fuck, what is this? That is 5 tanks out in the fucking F7 to F9 area. I've never seen that before. Never, not even in low tiers. I don't know what's going on. I assume that's not typical on the European server because even the enemy team seems surprised. But, wow. If his team had been pre-aimed there, that would have been quite a lot of damage going in. This position is very good for spotting from. The obvious condition to that being that you need a tank with very good camo, something the Object 430 definitely has in spades. He does get lit because he's firing his gun as well as spotting, but as you can see he's also using the terrain to screen him. This little gully he's in won't shield him from the enemy hill ramp, but it will shield him from the bulk of the enemy tanks which haven't made it up the hill yet. For now, the friendly team control the hill. They still have control of their own base. They're distributed pretty well across the map. Normally on NA I'd be looking at the hill and saying it's too light and there's too much hanging out in the B and C lines, the C and D lines, but because this is the EU server, I don't know if this would be quite as unusual for them. So the E100 is lit crossing the open, and although the Object 430's turret bloom issues deliver an unpleasant miss there, some damage does go on it. Now I'm guessing from the view range circle on the minimap, Cippalippus has all the crew view range skills and optics on this because it looks like it's about the same if not more than my own 430 has for view range, and I've got all of that as well. It's just I don't think my crew are... Actually no, my crew are fully trained, so it must be about the same. I don't know what else he's running. I don't know if they have brothers in arms, or I assume he doesn't have vents. Very few goons use vents anymore, especially as they go up the tiers. I don't think really anybody puts vents on tier 10 mediums anymore. Now obviously there are still a few people who have tanks that haven't had the equipment changed yet, myself included. Optics tend to be a bit pricey when you buy them in bulk. But the meta has definitely shifted towards view range over everything, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, particularly when you're a good enough player to have to carry the team on frequent occasions, because having the extra view range means you will see your enemy before they see you a lot of the time, and when you're carrying, that is an absolute must. you can't drive around blindly as the last tank alive when you've got 3 or 4 guys to clean up. So the enemy team on the hill, they managed to kill the friendly mediums up there and establish hill control, but then they threw it away by driving out and peeking over the edge, where they were rapidly alphaed down by Cippalippus and his nearby teammates. If you are going to control the hill like that and then peek over the edge, you need to be really fucking careful about how you do it, because often there are 2 or 3 tanks down here. On A, typically this spot is used by tank destroyers. I don't know how they go on EU. There is a tank destroyer here, but it looks like mostly mediums actually. On NA you do get things like bat chats and leopards down here, but typically your mediums are playing a more aggressive role up on the hill, or if they're particularly shitty players, will be hiding behind the church, not shooting their guns. So with the immediate threat on the hill dealt with, and an IS-7 going up there to clean up, Cippalippus briefly moves south to try and get spots across the field. But by the time the 1-2-1 in the field gets lit, he's got to decide where he wants to put his attention. Enemy Artie takes the IS-7, and so it looks like the focus... Oh, no. Focus was going to be hill, but then he changed his mind. 5100's facing a 1-2-1 here now. The 1-2-1 is not something you want to face in a 5100, because even though you have a very good auto-loading gun, he has a very big gun that hurts a lot more than you. The E4 ends up bagging him while he's distracted, but the E4 himself gets punished for it. This is a pretty slow game for a medium. We're already just shy of halfway into the game, and teams are still about half alive. They've lost about half their strength, and Cippalippus actually only has about 2k damage so far. My own playstyle in the 430 usually means I burn very brightly but for a very short amount of time before getting exploded by something I didn't see or carelessly drove into. Obviously, the Eurogoons seem to play a slightly longer game, and that ties in with what I've heard about their EU server. The games tend to be longer because people are a lot less aggressive than NA, and NA in turn is a lot less aggressive than the Russian server. And the test server is the most aggressive of all because people don't actually have to pay for their repairs, so they tend to just suicide into a massive brawl in the middle of the map, which is a lot of fun, but not very good for testing how tanks will work on your own server. So there we go, a handy 1.2, 1.3k damage on that Waffenträger. Enemy E100 is dealt with by Artie, and now Cippalippus has a JP2 actually on his rear end. Not in a position to shoot him, but certainly in a position to be a threat if it decides to. So using the low ground that screens him from both the enemy's spawn and the JP's position, he moves up towards it, popping over the ridge at the last minute to hold camo until the last possible moment. Unfortunately, a JP2 has moved ahead, and so he still has quite a bit of open ground to cover to get to it. Object 430's gun handling showing there, but the next shot goes in and it gets alphaed down by its team. Now, the enemy AMX has never been lit, but because it's a tank destroyer, it's a pretty safe assumption it's in or near their base. The T-54E1 was last seen on the hill and is very low on health, and so now, and only now, does Cippalippus begin moving across the field, and you can see the enemy Batchat tried the reverse of the K3 strat and fucked it up. you've got to know what you're doing when you cross the field. You can't charge towards the enemy base, and then when you're right under their guns, start to think about what you'll do from there. So he crosses in front of the AMX, but is too quick for it to get a reaction shot. It apparently doesn't realize you can shoot through wooden fences. This is a situation where auto aim is useful. If you can't draw an outline of the tank in sniper mode, you can always just pop into third person, lock it, and then fire. 212 gets a shotgun in there. First shot misses. Somebody else puts one in, and then a really nice blind shot there. Now, a puppy might just drive straight towards AMX at this point, cutting through the cap. However, Cippalippus is not a puppy, and so he skirts the cap to avoid alerting the AMX to his position. As far as it knows, he's probably continuing up the hill looking for the other arty, and it's not until he's already behind it and firing at it that it notices it's too late. He fakes to the left, so it won't begin traversing in the direction of his movement, and it falls for it. Hit goes in on the pattern. That was HE, so that would have surely been arty. I very much doubt the enemy 54E1 would even be carrying any HE. Actually, I know he would be carrying any HE because the 54E1's top gun doesn't get it, as far as I recall. 54E1 goes down. And now it's just a Batchat arty left. Now, of course, it's a Batchat arty, so it's probably going to take off at a great rate of knots and try and hide. So there we go. With just under 3.5 minutes left, Cippalippus now has 4.8k damage plus the blind shot, so probably closer to about 4.9. Oh, sorry, no, I'm terrible at math. 5.1. And we'll see if he can get one into the Batchat arty or not, but still, he's doubled his damage. And I'm pretty sure he picked up some good spotting from this too. Which is, again, one of the 430's strong suits, because it does have very good camo, and being a tier 10 medium, it has 400 base view range. You can get some really great spotting potential out of this thing if you throw some optics on it and put a good crew in. The bat goes down before he can get there, but it ends up being a pretty decent game. I'm not sure how representative of the EU Malinovka meta this is, but it was interesting to see that big glut of tanks at the start all spotted in the sort of middle of the open, actually, between the two small forests. Now, typically on NA you will see people in the small forest, but you won't see people driving up the 8 line. That's something I don't think I've ever actually seen in a high tier match before. Similarly, the way the enemy took the hill and then just got massacred, that's quite strange. On NA, usually players won't hang over the side of the hill like that unless they're really, really bad. Sometimes you'll get people with good gun depression tanks and, you know, a bit of skill actually taking shots from the top of the hill without being hit in return, but to actually have that many tanks driving around on the crest of the hill in full view of the small forest at C5 and the other small forest at D4, that's really strange. I mean, on NA, even bad players tend to know you stay to the right side when you're on the hill so that you're in defilade from the enemy guns. So I'm sure somebody who does play on the EU server will be able to comment here and say, you know, what this map usually plays like and whether this was just a bizarre fluke or not. But I just felt like showing somebody else who is a lot better at this game than me playing one of my favorite tanks, and, you know, any similarities and differences. I hope you enjoyed the video. There will be some more of other goons playing, and also keep in mind, because these are replays that come from other people that I'm recording on my game client, they're using my mod setup. These guys might be using a totally different mod setup, or they might not be using them at all, but because it's on my client, it will show my mods. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Wish you the best of luck in the field.